every person that comes in to work on this production has to have a valuable contribution to play. Otherwise, they're not being part of it. He said to me, "Oh, mate, so good to see you out, mate. Respect. So, can I ask you what happened to you, mate?" And I told him about my condition. He said, "Oh, yeah, I was in a wheelchair once. I was shot." He pulls up his shirt. He literally he unbuttoned his shirt and showed me 7 scars in his back where he had been shot 7 times.
What's going on, people? Welcome to this week's episode of Jordan Jarrett-Bryan's The Coolest Disabled in the World. That is me. I'm the coolest in the world. A day to test me. You'll lose. On this podcast, you know by now, we get people on to talk about the amazing things they've done and are doing, and just have a chat, man, and how disability has played a role in their life, if indeed it has at all. And this week on the podcast, I'm really, really glad to be joined by somebody who, doing a bit of research, has done a few more cool things than even I had known about before doing a little bit of digging. I'm joined on the podcast this week by the filmmaker, Chris Lynch. Good evening, Chris. How are we doing?
Jordan, thank you so much for having me. Great. I'm doing really well. Thank you. Yeah. All good.
Good, man. Good. We start off the podcast, Chris, by asking everybody for their cool. So I'm the coolest. We established that. We agree on that. There's no arguments there. But I ask all my guests what their coolness number out of 10 is. So for you, what would you say is your coolness number out of 10?
Oh, I give myself a solid 3.
Oh, come on, Chris. But we're not doing the fake humble thing. I'm not having 3. Come on, we can do better than that. What's your number out of 10?
I can't. I mean, maybe a 4. That's for others to judge. That's not for me to.
Oh no, I'll be judging. Don't worry about that. But I know it's more than a 4. We'll go with 4 for now. But by the end of the podcast, I know full well it'll be nowhere near 4.
Fair
and
play.
I think the viewers and listeners,
right,
once they hear the things that you've been doing, will also agree with me as well. Listen, thank you very much for coming on the podcast today. Talk to me a little bit about filmmaking, some of the jobs that you've done, which you are really proud of, because I know that a lot of your work is centered around disability and living with a disability and what life in the UK is like for people with different disabilities. But talk me through some of those things that you've created.
Sure. So I guess my career started off in advertising many years ago, back in Belfast. Working through, I set up one of the first digital agencies in Northern Ireland in 2007. And that sort of grew into like traditional advertising. We're doing a lot of TV commercials and podcasts, and that's essentially where my career started. But then more recently, when I got into the realms of film, I was working with a couple of guys, really well-established filmmakers in Belfast, Eamon Devlin and Jared Stratton, and they've got a production company called Triple Vision. So they primarily do factual, and we got talking, and I guess some of the topics around disability that weren't really being looked at, and you know yourself, like for many, many years, disability has often been polarized. You're either that Paralympian or you're destitute and on benefits, but no one was really taking a step forward to look at the raw truth of what living with a disability is like. So we developed this idea based on a thesis that a couple of scientists had written called the disability paradox. And the disability paradox really, it was this notion that if you live with a disability, you should be extremely happy, or the majority of people really have a very happy life. And despite living with disability, they live a great life, and, that they are very positive. My experience, however, was very different. I dealt with a lot of depression over the years, and that, I think, came from a lack of acceptance of my disability. I went to mainstream education. I didn't grow up around people with disabilities. And I was told, I have a disability called osteogenesis imperfecta, which is, apart from being a tongue twister, it's brittle bone disease. So I've had over 100 broken bones. Most of those fractures happened during my childhood. So I probably spent about 3 years of my childhood in hospital, which meant I missed out on a lot of stuff, a lot of surgeries, a lot of corrective surgeries. And, the thing that I remember doctors sort of telling me and my parents telling me was that this condition sort of died down when you hit adulthood. So I had it ingrained as I was a child, thinking I'm going to be able to walk maybe one day, where I was using a chair from about the age of 3, right? And yeah, so this sort of idea, this sort of lack of acceptance, this became really problematic for me in my adult life. And as I was watching all my friends settle down with kids and creating families, I was sort of left behind, and very much this sort of Peter Pan syndrome. I was always this sort of party animal and looking to keep the party going, basically, where everyone around me was just settling down into a normal sort of routine in life. And yeah, I mean, this idea then of the disability paradox was a really interesting notion for us to explore through the documentary. It enabled me to talk and meet with some amazing contributors from the disabled community. And I was on this quest, this pursuit of happiness, to see what makes us all tick. And it was something that was relatable for everyone, not just if you had a disability. This was like, how can we find happiness in our lives? And that exploration was really like a great journey for me personally to go through. But I think to sort of peel back the curtain on disability, to give a very raw insight. I mean, because I just opened myself up and made myself very vulnerable on camera. And it was, a chance for people to see the reality of living with a disability. And when I say that, I know that I have friends who live with disability on a completely different scale, who go through a lot greater difficulties on a day-to-day basis than I do. So I can't say that my existence or my experience of disability has been hard in comparison to others. But I think for the BBC to have commissioned this was a very brave step at that time, because all the, as I said, like the stories that they were after were just these sort of polar opposites. So the disability paradox, we had, I mean, just to get to the end very quickly, my conclusion of it, because I met with some great people who were talking about the families, they had the relationships, their great careers. And the conclusion that I had from the end of this was that, it's really a case of distracting you from the day-to-day. Distraction, although it's probably not what the psychiatrist will tell you to do and the path to follow. Typically, if you're depressed or you're unhappy about certainly anything in life, it's a case of trying to get to the core root of that. It's a case of, treating that, whether it's, you're grieving for a family member, or, you've got financial problems. Typically, for many of us, a lot of these things are moments in our lives and we can overcome them. But with a disability, if you're waking up and having to deal with the struggles and challenges you face every single day, those aren't going to go away. And with the best intentions of therapy, there's no one that can really resolve those issues, because if you're facing them every day and that is an issue that you're burdened with, let's just say, it's a hard thing to try and overcome. So for me, getting over that was really looking into this idea of distraction and filling my life with, career, like focusing on my work, and all the things that bring me enjoyment in life. And, that I think really was the start for me of looking at how I could shape my work around film and TV, whilst doing something that could really support and enhance the disabled community. That for me was the sort of starting point of everything. I think that was just such a fascinating journey to go on, and it cemented my passion for work in TV, and I haven't looked back since. And there's been a lot of really crazy stuff we'll touch on, but yeah, that was really the starting point, and such a really pivotal moment.
So it's really good to hear, Chris, that TV and filmmaking has really given you a buzz and a drive and an energy that something that you genuinely love and are good at. But be honest, have you accepted your disability?
I think more so now than I did even 10 years ago. Yeah. You sort of, as you grow older, I think it becomes easier to do. Certainly in your younger years, I think as well, as I said, like when you had that sort of conditioning, that sort of notion that your disability was going to improve as a child, as a teenager, and then it not. I think that was one of the big things. But ultimately, I mean, a lot of people advocate for people with disabilities going into mainstream education. And I just wonder what my experience would have been like if I had been surrounded by more people with disabilities. I didn't even have any friends that there was no one that I knew as a kid that had a disability. And I do regret that. I really, I wish there had been more people in my life, because I guess being able to share a lot of that commonality is, for anyone, I think that it's a really it can be a very powerful thing.
The reason why I asked the question, I find this interesting, Chris, is because I had a very good friend of mine. He's not with us anymore, but he acquired his disability, and he was in a chair. He was a paraplegic after something that happened, um, and he was the most outwardly fun. We used to go raving. We played basketball together for like 10 years. He lived not far from me. We had many things in common, both from the same part of London. He was just good vibes. But underneath all of that, and I think if I've racked my brain, I think once he might have admitted this to me, but it was clear to me he'd never accepted that he was disabled. He would never accept that he was in a chair. He found it was in amongst all the kind of vibes and the fun and the bravado that came with him. Underneath all of it, there was this real pain that he resented the fact that he was in a wheelchair. He never really came to grips with it. And that's why I found what you were saying earlier on interesting, because some people find it very easy to accept I'm disabled. My life is difficult, but I have some great things going on as well, as you started with. But others are just like, I can't accept it. And I don't want to misrepresent what you're saying, but it sounds like for a large part of your life,
Not at all.
you really find it difficult to just accept that
Yeah.
your condition wasn't going to get any better.
Yeah.
Is that
That's
fair?
it. Yeah, absolutely right. But listen, the best thing genuinely that has happened to me since is moving to London. After the Disability Paradox, I set up with Eamon and Jared, set up a disabled led production company called One and Five. So we were a CIC, a social enterprise, but found it very, very difficult to try and get any traction. Now, Northern Ireland is the worst performing part of the UK. The economy is just so bad. Belfast has had its troubles for many, many years, where I come from. But I guess the problem the way I see it, Jordan, is that because so many businesses have been struggling over there, that they find it difficult to look at social causes, and that's why D&I has taken such a backseat. So I knew that I had to be in London to really further and develop my career. So moved over to London, basically here nearly 3 years now, set up Diverse Media in November 22. First major project was a huge piece that we did with Allianz and the Paralympic Committee, which was an amazing film. It was a training series called Move Now. I directed a crew. I mean, we had about 45 on set. 50% of our crew were from the disabled community.
Amazing.
And it was quite an interesting process because the clients, I mean, we had three clients. We had the agency, Allianz, and then the Paralympic Committee. So there were a lot of people to appease throughout the whole production process, as you know from experience. But we we got to sort of stage where we were struggling to find crew from the disabled community to to fit into certain roles, and they ended up turning around to me and said, "Well, look, even if you just bring in some of these people for if you get some people that have a disability with work experience, then that'll that'll be enough for us." I'm like, that ain't happening. I said, every person that comes in to work on this production has to have a valuable contribution to play. Otherwise, they're not being part of it. So
Sure.
we worked damn hard to make sure that we had an amazing crew, and we had the representation there, and it was such an incredible result, because like at the time when it was about a year ago that we got some of the stats from Allianz. The film had been viewed over 166 million times. It picked up.
Wow.
We picked up a Clio for us. Clio is like a Los Angeles award. It's a bit like the Oscars in the advertising world. And yeah, I mean, it was just a phenomenal success for them, and the whole thing went viral. And that was a really great project for Diverse Made Media to start off with. Since then, I've been able to really, I guess, look at some of the problems that I've had along the way. So, like any wheelchair user, if you want to be a camera operator, it is very, very difficult. I always say you need 4 arms. You need 2 arms to push yourself, 2 arms to hold the camera. And
This is interesting, Chris. Before you go any further, Chris, just talk me through, or talk our audience through that are listening and watching, what it's like being a director, being on a set in a production such as you're describing, when you're in a wheelchair. What are the things that make it difficult for you? What are the things that have to be considered in order for you to do your job to the best of your ability?
yeah, it all comes down to planning, and I think nowadays there is a lot more thought in the whole pre-production process, especially if you're working like with a brand that is already entrenched to the disabled community, such as the International Paralympic Committee and Allianz, who this was. They are a lot more aware of things such as access coordinators. So access coordinators are now roles that are typically associated with productions and larger productions, where if you have crew, for instance, or talent that is within that production, that their access needs can be looked after. And that's a really great and very important thing. And quite often, they're very simple things that just need to be put in place to accommodate people. It's not as if you're asking for mountains to be moved. It's just very basic, sort of fundamental things, like if there's a stage, that there's a ramp put out, if there's an accessible toilet and it's going to be wide enough, if you have like an electric wheelchair, or is there a interpreter for sign language? Does that person speak BSL in terms of their sign language? Or so there's just a lot of little things like that that an access coordinator is really great at facilitating, and a really important part of including in the production. So having those sorts of things in place really help, and they help my job, because not so much as my needs, but making sure I know that access coordinator is then there to support everyone else within the production. So it's sort of one pressure. I mean, it's something, especially with so many people with disabilities on set, it's just one less worry for me. Like, obviously I'm overseeing, and yourself, from directing, you're like a master of ceremonies, you're spinning all the plates, you're trying to make sure that everyone's accounted for. But having that access coordinator just takes a little bit of the pressure off, so that you can focus on the more creative things, which is great. But aside from that, it's directing and being part of that process. If you've got a disability, it's no different really. Then if you've got all the the sort of basics covered and you've discussed everything before the actual shoot, what it's going to be like. And I think, doing a recce is very important as well. So you can understand the layout of the studio or your location or locations. Because you don't want any sort of curveballs in the day. You turn up and you find that maybe you're shooting in a restaurant and there's 3 steps to get up the toilet in the back of it or the venue or wherever it may be. So it's I mean, the old adage, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And I think the more prep that you can do to equip you as a director, the better the outcome will be. And it allows you to, as I said, like think about more of the creative things which you need to be doing and focusing on rather than the more operational side of things.
Interesting, yeah. And just finally on the job you do, just talk to me a little bit about what it is about filmmaking or being a filmmaker that you love so much. What is it about creating films that really gives you that passion, that buzz, and that drive?
Oh, it's got to be the storytelling. It's just being able to, I think, really being able to tell those untold stories. And the one thing that I love through our work at Diverse Media is that, although I'm able to really champion people with disabilities, I felt very, very strongly that, to be a real, I can't even call myself a D&I advocate, but someone who's really trying to champion change, you have to do it for every community. It's not just about, supporting one community and like I've felt very, very strongly and passionately about that from the start. And the thing that I love through Diverse Media is that we've been able to tell so many different stories on behalf of so many different communities. And our MO is that, we've now developed a really good roster of crew spanning every department and every community. And it means that we can, if we get a brief from a client that is looking to do something for, like we working with The Voice. We did Black on the Square, for instance. So, we then go to our roster and make sure that we've got the correct representation behind the camera and then in front, if we're doing interviews, like in front of the camera as well. And for me, that's a really important thing, that we can represent different communities in a very authentic way by having the right people involved in the production from the very start to how it's delivered. And, I think in doing that, then we can all support each other much better because we're so in tune. Like, I think, like anyone who's working in this sort of D&I landscape knows that it's far easier to support other communities because you know exactly the challenges that you face, which are so similar in many ways to others. And you automatically have empathy and understanding for the different struggles and things going on that others are facing. So I think, sorry, it's a long-winded answer, but ultimately, it's the storytelling, and it's being able to tell all these really exciting, untold stories that haven't seen the light of day. And I think that the thing, and again, like something that you'll know about when you're running a production company, and when you have the capacity to just shoot stuff, you don't have to wait about for a commission. It's if you've got something that lands in your lap and you feel really passionate about getting it out there, and it's a really important subject, then we can do that. We can allocate the resource and just get out there and do it. And I think it's a privilege and I think a really great position to be in.
And I totally agree. And as someone that runs a production company also as well, and so, the same kind of, if you like, lens and mantra that you have, which is ensuring that my production team is as diverse as it can be, because one, it's not only the right thing to do, in my opinion, it breeds better results. And I think the clients benefit because we're noticing now that clients much more understand that if they work with a company like mine or even yours, they're going to get a better product from it because they understand these guys have a wide breadth of different experiences, creative visions within that pool. Therefore, they can see things that a group, another production company as just one type of person can't. So I think there's it's not only the right thing to do in terms of it just makes me feel good to be diverse. There's actually a practical commercial value for the client to work with, companies like yours, a company like mine. So I definitely echo and agree with everything that you've just said there. I also noticed, and those that are watching this will see this as well, there's some decks going on there, right? And I want to know more about your DJing exploits, Chris, because as someone that dabbled for years DJing myself, what's going on there? What are we saying? What's happening? What kind of music are we playing here?
Yeah, all house. All house. So
Okay.
it started, dude. I started DJing when I was 16, and I ended up I became a complete truant in school. So I left. I'd started my A levels and did about a year in school, and then left. And then I went to Ibiza, and I spent shortly after I spent 4 summers, 4 consecutive summers out there DJing.
Oh wow!
I had the most amazing time. And then I came back, when back in Ireland, set up a business called Club Life. So we had the big awards event that we ran every year. We brought in some of the biggest DJs into the country, doing a lot of club nights and things like that. And that's where I thought my career was going to go. But just sort of things naturally merged into the sort of behind the scenes, the marketing and advertising, which led me down a different path. But it's always been something that I've been really passionate about. Been doing some DJing here in London, which has been great. But I like house, start off US, like vocal house. And now I'm sort of, my tastes have matured a bit, let's just say. So it's like tech house, deep house, progressive house are my sort of main thing.
You know what? That can work, Chris. We're not talking about like this kind of cheesy elevator vocal house. We're talking like proper. We're talking proper progressive. Okay.
Like some of the like legends like Martha Walsh and Angie Stone and all that sort of real soulful Chicago house starting off piano.
Oh, there
house.
we go. We can work with that. We can work with that.
So
we can work with that. And I know that you did a set with Judge Jules as well. Tell us a little bit about that and how that came about.
Yeah. So my cousin was one of the editors of FHM magazine many years ago, and he got me in touch with Mike and Claire, who owned Manumission in Ibiza. And I basically, after chatting to them, they got me a gig in their pre-club bar called Bar M, which is now Ibiza Rocks. So I started playing there, met through some of the residents, and then started coming back, each summer playing, and my network grew and got some residencies in different places. And coming back to playing in Bar M, I was playing for Judgment Sunday, which was like the pre-club for Judge Jules's nights at Eden. And I played with some like amazing other guys as well. John Kelly was another big sort of guy at that sort of time. I warmed up for a guy called Scott Bond. That was Gatecrasher, a big trance brand that was from the UK, God's Kitchen as well. It was really good fun. I mean, and that was the thing, some of the happiest memories and times of my life out there and DJing. And it's just, I think music is just such a powerful thing. So yeah, the decks, that's the thing. I would have been in a more professional setting in the office, but
this is good.
I'm back home today, so hence this background.
No, this is good. Just reminding you, 3 out of 10, my backside, by the way. But we'll just move. We'll move past that for now. 3 out of 10. So on that, as someone that spent a lot of time in clubs as well, my dad's a DJ. I've put on many nights on his behalf, and separately as well. What was your experience being in a chair, in that kind of club culture? Because I know most clubs are downstairs, upstairs, old build. Oh, we haven't got a lift. So I've carried many of my friends down into clubs or up the steps of clubs, whatever it may be. What's been your experience of? Obviously, it didn't deter you too much because you were doing it for years and years and years. But what's the club scene saying in terms of accessibility for people?
Oh man, you're gonna laugh at this. So totally had all my friends like carrying me up and down the flights of stairs that I couldn't get to. But, you know, I'm a small guy, right? I often call myself an Irish leprechaun. I'm 4'5", okay? So like most DJ boxes are very, very challenging for me. So
Yes.
most of the time, like especially when I was playing, I remember playing in Eden, and, you know, back there was like 3 turntables, 2 CDJs, mixer, and like one bar stool did not cut it. So I had 3 bar stools behind the DJ box, and I was hopping from bar stool to bar stool to get from one side to the other when I was changing record. So yeah, it's
You made it work.
It's been a laugh.
That's the main thing. You made it work.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I love
So
that. I love that.
a lot of hacks, as we all do. You know, we have all these different
yeah.
hacks that we just create and workarounds. But yeah,
Do what you gotta
some
do, man.
interesting
Do what you gotta
stories.
do. Indeed. Just before I get to my final question, Chris, just interesting to know, what would be your advice to people? Because this podcast is called, you know, I'm the coolest disabled in the world. But the real point of it is about confidence, right? I'm a very confident person, but I find a lot of people with disabilities, they don't celebrate the things they're great at because they're not shown or told that they're great because of disability, because they're in a chair, whatever it may be. What would your advice be to somebody out there watching or listening to this that feels like, nah, I'm makes themselves small and doesn't really push out their chest and say, no, Jordan, I am the coolest person in the world? What would be your advice to people to grab that confidence, to really tap into the great things they've done, or just even the great people that they actually are?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I'm taking your words from the start of this in terms of coolness factor and fair play, but it's listen to others and listen to what other people are telling you. It is so hard to clam up and just shut down completely and think that you don't have any self-worth in society. But let me tell you, I mean, I often refer to this book that Andy Nairn, who's one of the founders of Lucky General's, an ad agency in London, his wife's got MS, and he talks very openly about people with disabilities, and he refers to us as being some of the most creative people in the world. And I think that's one, you know, and he says that because of, you know, what I was saying about like problem solving, because we're having to problem solve in everyday life. And I think, you know, we need to really understand, you know, the level of creativity that we bring to the table and the different skills and things that we do have. And you know, we can easily dismiss the talents and skills that are there, and we just don't realize. And it's easy, I think, you know, because of how society views and how you're meant to feel about disability, it's very easy to discard those things. So like I completely, I completely agree that, you know, we all need to be more confident, myself included.
And it's not easy. Like you said, it's not easy.
Yeah, it's not easy. No, it's not easy. Yeah.
Final question we ask everybody, Chris, is what's the stupidest question somebody has asked you in relation to your disability?
You're putting me on the spot. Okay. So back in my clubbing days, now, again, just to reference the troubles back in Northern Ireland, you know, paramilitary troubles for decades, Protestants versus Catholics, a lot of violence, a lot of murders happened. And I was really fortunate in that I flew under the radar. So I was able to, you know, mingle with, like I grew up as an Irish Catholic, but I was able to get into lots of different communities without anyone asking. Because typically if you go to a house party when you were of my sort of generation growing up, if you were at a house party after a club, someone would say to you, "Oh, so where are you from, mate?" And that would be an indication of what, you know, community they were from, you know, whether they were from the good or the bad side, right?
Yeah.
So when I was out at a, you know, and the great thing, no one asked me because of my disability, you know, I came in, guy in a wheelchair, no one even thought of even asking me at all. And it was just great. So I was just a chameleon getting on, like being able to go to parties and get on with everyone. Brilliant. So I was at this nightclub one night, which is no longer there. It's called the Coach in Banbridge. And I remember this guy, he was sitting up at this sort of VIP area and he calls me up. And he's like a real hard guy. I mean, you could tell real sees like probably paramilitary UVF or UFF, which were, you know, in that sort of area and where he would have been from. He said to me, "Oh, mate, so good to see you out, mate. Respect. So can I ask you what happened to you, mate?" And I told him about my condition. He said, "Oh, yeah, I was in a wheelchair once. I was shot." He pulls up his shirt. He literally, he unbuttoned his shirt and showed me 7 scars in his back where he had been shot 7 times. And I was like, wow. And like, this is the thing. It's so, and I've had so many instances like that when, in nightclubs especially, people off their tits and they come up and put their arm around me. They say, "Oh, mate, so good to see you out. So what happened to you?" And I then take from that story that I heard, I turn around to them and someone would be a sweaty mess hanging off me saying, what happened to you?" I go, "I was shot." You were shot, were you? It's like, and their face just drops and it is priceless. Okay. And I have the biggest laugh, you know, but then they start actually talking away and they're like, "Oh, do you know, and it's always this relatable sort of element. It's like, "Oh yeah, my uncle's father's brother's sister's dog was in a wheelchair once. So yeah, I completely get it. Respect." And it's like, but this is, you know, we've all had stories like this out and it's just like, so yeah, there's been a few eyebrow raising moments, let's just say, memories that I will keep and cherish forever.
No doubt. Listen, Chris, you're super dope, man. I've seen some of your work and it's high quality and really interesting. You said at the start, you pushed it up to a 3 to a 4 out of 10. I'm not having that at all. I think you're easily an 8 out of 10, mate, which is high bar for me because I don't give out 8s very easily. But I think the fact that you're a DJ, you know, you're a filmmaker, you run your own business, and just a lovely guy. I just think you're super dope, man. So I'm really glad that you have your passion, man. Your passion is filmmaking, and I'm really glad that you found that and you're in control of that and you can tell the stories that you want to tell. Do you know what I mean? Autonomy now is the way forward, man. We've got to be able to do what we want to do now, tell our stories and stories that are interesting to us rather than being commissioned and told, "Can you tell this story?" I don't care about that story. I care about this story. And the fact that you've kind of got that, I love that, man. I love that for you. So please keep it going. And thank you very much for your time on the pod, man. I really appreciate it.
No, you're an absolute star. Big love, Jordan. I really appreciate the time. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Too, man.
Appreciate it.
Thanks anytime, okay, bro. Cheers. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Slap the subscribe button, whack it in the WhatsApp groups, share it to all your people then. Until next time, we'll see you then. Peace.